It's good to reconnect again with fellow industrial engineers on this platform, which has been a great initiative by some of our members who have taken the responsibility to put a very good platform like this together to engage us and keep us connected on a monthly basis. I must say that it's very, very commendable. And with the support of our faculty as well, all our departmental staff, the lecturers, the professors, we appreciate you for the support. And we continue to see how this will make a difference in the career development, professional development, and business development for those of us who are always part of the program. So today we are having one of us, Engineer Olumuyiwa Oluleye, who will be discussing a very, very interesting topic, engineering a nation, our collective role in nation building. I'm sure some of you will be wondering, that topic, why now? How is it relevant to engineering? I'm sure by the time you listen, you take your time from beginning to the end to listen to what Muiwa has to say, the dimensions through which he has approached the topic, and why that topic is germane at this particular point in time in the history of our nation, where we're coming from, where we are, and where we're going, and how that role and the responsibility that engineers have generally relates to this important mission. Then we will be able to understand the reason why that topic is quite relevant at this time. And the role each and every one of us has to play will become clearer, and why we should play that role with the whole of our mind and our heart and our strength as part of our own contribution to make our country what it should be, what we desire it to be at this point in time. But before we go forward, let me put it in context by giving you a little bit or reminding us of what industrial engineering is all about, because it's a unique field of engineering that actually integrates the social, the technical, and the economic factors of a society together. If you check definition of industrial engineering, it says it's an engineering profession that is concerned with the optimization of complex processes, systems, or organizations by developing, improving, and implementing integrated systems of people, money, knowledge, information, and equipment. Industrial engineering is central to manufacturing operation. Industrial engineering uses such specialized knowledge and skills in the mathematical and social sciences, together with the principles and methods of engineering analysis and design, to specify, predict, and evaluate the results obtained from systems and processes. So you will discover that it's talking about systems. Systems are not just about technical systems all the time. As a matter of fact, technical system cannot be effective without understanding the social system that operates it, and that includes the people. And if you look at the state of our nation today, the fact that a lot has been overlooked as to how the human system interacts with the social, technical, and the economic system is one major disconnect why we have most of the problems that we have. And a lot of people have gotten away with the wrong notion that as an engineer, we must remain within the scope of engineering practice without understanding how decisions that we leave behind for other people to make on our behalf impact what we do and how effective our contributions to society can be if we make efforts to understand their own thinking and how their own contribution
Oh, okay.
Hello?
Okay, he's back.
Sorry.
Sorry, we lost you for a while.
Sorry. I don't know what happened. The thing just went off suddenly.
Okay.
I don't know what you heard me last say. I was just trying to give a small drama that played out a couple of months ago, about 2 or 3 months. The Nigerian scorecard, the engineering of engineers have been doing that project for the past 5 years on behalf of initiatives we introduced last year is to engage some top executives, both in government and in the private sector. And had a session with the Minister for Works and Housing, His Excellency Babatunde Raji. And after my presentation, one of his comments when he started was that he knows that engineers have never supported his administration. We have always been against him because engineers said that because he's a lawyer, that portfolio of Ministry of Works and Housing should have been manned by an engineer. And for that reason, our report has always been against him. So I had to, first of all, quickly clear the air to tell him how the scoring of that scorecard, because his ministry scored very, very low in the area of roads and bridge infrastructure, which is a survey conducted by for Nigerians, and it's what Nigerians say. So I explained to him that it has nothing to do with it. But deep inside me, definitely I know that it's a misnomer. There is no way they will put an engineer to head the Ministry of Justice. So why did they find it convenient to put a lawyer to head the Ministry of Works and Housing and Infrastructure? I mean, it's odd in a society like this, but this is where people put politics above governance. If we really want to get things right, we need to put the right people in the right position. But that will only happen when we show up. When we don't show up as engineers, they don't know whether we are there, or we even understand what is required to be done. And for them to begin to appreciate the value we bring to the table to make things happen in a nation like us. There was one other minister in charge of power about 3 regimes ago. I won't mention his name because some of us may know him. And he came on the television, national television. They were asking him about what he's going to do about power and when power will be stable for Nigeria. And he said within the next 6 months, it's going to increase power supply from 4,000 megawatts to 10,000 megawatts. Gee, I cringe. Because for you to do that, have you thought through the process of the power generation, the contracting that is involved, the lead time it would take to develop and produce the turbines and all the other major machineries that would generate the power for us? When you do that, what is the transmission system? What is its current technical integrity level to deliver it? And from the transmission to get it to the distribution, and the distribution network that will support and deliver the last mile power to everybody. How on earth would you say that you would change from 4,000 to 10,000 megawatts in less than 6 months? It clearly demonstrates lack of understanding of what it takes to deliver power and make change of that magnitude. And these are the areas where engineers come. But if engineers only stay in their technical corner, politicians stay in their political corner, and we don't try to understand their language, they don't try to understand our own, the development efforts required to take our nation from where it is now to where it should be will take a longer time to realize. So it's on this note that I would like all of us to get prepared, fasten our seatbelt, and be prepared to listen carefully to what our guest lecturer today will be talking to us about. That is engineering a nation. And it will tell you what it is that we need to do to position ourselves to become more relevant so that we can contribute our quota to that development process. So thank you very much. And on this note, I'd like to hand over back to the moderator, who will introduce our guest speaker or whatever is the next on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for making us more expectant for all that is to come, and for highlighting or stressing the need for us as engineers to get involved in governance and leadership instead of leaving it to people who are already there. Thank you, sir. So at this point, we would welcome our special guest of honor, Professor I.F. Adewale. He is the former VC of the University of Ibadan and also former Honorable Minister of Health for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And although he is unavoidably absent this evening, he would really have loved to be here, but he's on a flight at the moment. He would be ably represented by Professor Ayelari, who was the former DVC admin, former Deputy Vice Chancellor of Administration at the University of Ibadan, and also a former acting Vice Chancellor. So Professor Ayelari, if we can hear from you now, that would be good. Okay, maybe we would move that to a later part of the meeting because it seems to be unavailable at the moment. Okay, but if some of us noticed from the flyer of the event, this edition of our lecture series is quite interesting. It's quite special because there is a surname that happens to be recurrent on the program, on the agenda for today. And it's a name that we have grown to love in the department and even outside the department, in Faculty of Tech generally and in the University of Ibadan. It's the name of our very beloved professor, Professor A.E. Oluleye, and he is the guest of honor for tonight's lecture. And he has a brief goodwill message for us this evening. So, Prof, sir, are you Are you here? Let's
Yeah.
welcome him in the chat, in the comments. Let's let him know that we are glad to have him here. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And I would like to commend the department and the Alumni Association for putting this program together. I think for a long time, we've been in our own cocoon and probably talking to ourselves. And this is one big way in which we can begin to impact the community, more so the nation itself. Also, for those of us in academia, it's a chance to marry, or is it get a strong tie to the town, so that we have a proper gown and town relationship. But most of all, I would like to see that we can begin to make an impact nationally and of course globally too, when ideas come to the forefront. And I think industrial engineering is a very unique, just like the chairman said, a very unique discipline course where you get skills from several parts. And when you weave this together, you should be able to speak many languages. And apart from speaking many languages, to facilitate technical enterprise. And so it will be a pleasure to see us beginning to bring ideas to how the nation can begin to walk, can begin to run, and how we can, bridge that gap, which appears to be expanding when we talk of technology. But there's something I believe in. Maybe I'm a lot more optimistic. There's this saying that the last can be the first. We're lagging behind, but somehow, if we get our acts together, we just might be able to leapfrog many of the nations ahead of us. But the topic of tonight is germane in the sense that except we know our rules, it will be difficult for us to begin to address the issues squarely. So it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I wish you all the best. And I hope the other series, other lectures coming up will be well received, and we can begin to see the impact little by little. So these are baby steps, but they're important steps. And so you have my best wishes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I was glad to hear your voice on here, sir. And everybody in the comments is also very excited to hear from you. Okay, so before we move on, I would like to especially recognize Professor Olakwegba. He's a member of the council and he is representing the VC in absentia. Okay, please, would he be giving a goodwill message, or we just go on? Okay, I guess we go on to the next item on our list. Okay, so now we have the reading of the speaker citation to be given by Engineer Ayo Oluleye.
All right, good evening, everyone. And I'll be reading the citation for our guest speaker. I'm currently sharing my screen. Can you just confirm that you can see it?
Yes, yes, we can.
All right, thank you. All right, great. All right, so Oluleye Olumuyiwa graduated from the Department of Industrial and Production Engineering in February 2006 with first-class honors. He worked for Nestle Nigeria PLC at the Agbara factory, initially as a youth service industrial engineer and as a data analyst on Nestle factory SAP implementation project. He was a PTDF scholar and proceeded to a master's degree in petroleum engineering at the Imperial College London, where he graduated with distinction. Afterward, he joined Schlumberger Nigeria Limited as a subsea engineer trainee. Olumuyiwa rose to become General Field Engineer, the highest level in his field of discipline, and distinguished himself as one of the few engineers to attain the position of Field Supervisor in charge of deploying subsea landing string technology in projects in Nigeria and the Ivory Coast. He was a recipient of the Performed by Schlumberger Silver Award in 2010. He got his hands into agricultural and entrepreneurship, where he set up a poultry production farm. He was a business analyst, project manager, laying the groundwork for a mid-sized commercial aviation startup. He was a project manager for IMAP's GmbH deployment of additive manufacturing capacity for the Command Engineering Depot, CD, of the Nigerian Army. He was a senior consultant at Max, a mobility startup, where he led business change projects that aided the successful Series B fundraising round of about $31 million in 2021. He presently works as a field engineer at the Subsea Production Systems division of Schlumberger, of SLB, a global technology company driving energy innovation for a balanced planet in Senegal. Olumuyiwa is an avid reader, a student of history, and a business analysis and product management enthusiast. He is happily married with 2 children. I'd just like us to welcome, it's a virtual session, so we can't stand. But I'd just like us to welcome our wonderful speaker, Olumuyiwa Olule, this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So, good evening, everyone. Good evening, the special guest of honor, the chairman, the head of department, the acting head of department of Industrial and Production Engineering, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be delivering this lecture, a great honor, in fact, to be giving back in this way after such a long time. This is the fourth IPEAA lecture, and the title is Engineering a Nation, Our Collective Role in Nation Building. Countries are birthed in different ways, mostly through conquest or annexation. Nations are an idea, they are an aspiration that people have, and that can become something really beautiful. Normal people are born into humble backgrounds, and somehow they navigate their way into wealth or acclaim. I believe that nations can be that also. This evening, I'll take us on a journey through the history of Nigeria, looking at the wider world, say 200 years ago, or perhaps 200 to 600 years ago, looking at what existed at the time, what happened after our annexation by the British, our independence and beyond, and what we need to do to negotiate the future, to make our future what will be desirable, and to look at some frontiers for change, and then I will conclude. So our place in the wider world and our contact to Europe. So Africa is one of the most diverse continents in the world. On such a small landmass, we have 30% of the languages of the world. Nigeria is also one of the most diverse countries in Africa. At the time before our contact with Europe in the 1400s, Africans had very little contact with each other. That explains the diversity in language because of our geography, our mildly navigable rivers, mountainous regions, and so on. It led to a series of situations where we became extremely diverse. There came our contact with Europe, our soon-to-be business partners. Initially, skirmishes at the coast did occur, but later on, the Portuguese, who were great mariners, would begin the business of buying slaves off the coast of Africa. And that, in most of the African coasts, became significant business. It became a business model for marauders to go into the hinterland and pick out people who will be sold for gin or whatsoever to be sent across the Atlantic to South Latin America and later North America. I must point out here that the Portuguese at the time already had significant technology advantages over the Africans. They sailed from Europe to Africa. Of course, the slavery business model continued for centuries until the British had a change of mind, a change of the understanding of the morality of slavery, and started to blockade the West African coast to prevent the continual slavery of Africans. Of course, the kings and chiefs of the coast of Africa, Lagos, Opobo, and so on, Dahomey, had become rich from this sort of model. A famous Nigerian who was rescued from this sort of existence is Samuel Ajayi Crowther, who was rescued from a Portuguese ship. The relationship between Europe and Africa continued. I would say over the intervening centuries, changed a little bit. At the first contact with the Portuguese, Europe hadn't developed significant improvements in firearms, but this will change significantly and will turn that relationship, that business relationship, into a different kind of relationship. In the 1860s, Lagos will be annexed by the British after several bombardments of the Lagos coast. And much later, several incursions will be made into Nigeria. Benin, the deposition of Oba Oranwe, and later further into the hinterland with the taking of Kano. So the main business model of Africa at this time was such that slavery occurred. Marauders will take people from the hinterland and sell them. And there were internecine wars in Yoruba land, for example. So the entry of the British was much of a match in because of the nature of the societies that did occur at the time. After the British annexed or formed, amalgamated the southern and northern protectorates of Nigeria, much later, agitation for self-rule will start by the indigenes of what is now called Nigeria. They would fight for independence, and there was solidarity amongst the young men of the time. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, Anthony Enahoro. These men will fight and will push for a new nation. I'm sure they had very brilliant ideas of what the nation would be. Most of the agitations were largely bloodless, very different from what was seen in Kenya, for example, with the Mau Mau terrorism led by Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya. After World War II, the internal self-governing status was given to the Nigerians to begin to experiment on self-rule. That proved to be quite successful. It laid the foundations of some of the things that we enjoy today. Free education by Obafemi Awolowo at the time will lead to a new set of elite in Nigeria who blaze the trail to do many great things. Now, post-independence, or rather just before independence in 1959, of course, there was an election. And the country was divided, obviously, much the same way it is today. MPC in the north, Northern Progressive Congress, the Action Group in the west, and in the east, you have the National Conference of Nigerian Citizens. Of course, the north had the majority, and the government was formed. The NCNC would take the president, would be president, and Tafawa Balewa would be prime minister. Nnamdi Azikiwe would be president. Not very long into the beginnings of what would be a, beauty or start of African, of an African nation, wranglings began to occur. A lot of unhealthy rivalry, especially in the southwest of Nigeria, will lead to really brilliant men, Obafemi Awolowo and S.L. Akintola, who would, part ways. S.L. Akintola would join the North and ally with them. And it really turned the southwest or western Nigeria at the time into, a difficult place to be. There was a lot of, speaking anyhow, saying inflammatory things, and it set the place on fire. At that time, it was put under some sort of administratorship because of the way the Western Nigeria was damaged. Politicization in the military. So, because we can't talk about the Nigeria without talking about the military. It's impossible to talk about the history of Nigeria without talking about the military. In 1964, the first Nigerian general commanding will be chosen. There were 3 candidates. Samuel Ademulegun was Brigadier General, I think, 1st Division. Zimai Malari and J.T.U. Aguiyi-Ironsi. J.T.U. Aguiyi-Ironsi and Ademulegun were frolicked with the politicians and set up sort of the military for its incursions into politics. October 1965, there was a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Lagos. There was a planned coup for that time, but it was postponed to January 15. Some young military officers who were very ideological, who had watched what had happened in the first 5 years of the beginning of the nation, thought that they had better ideas of how to run the nations, and indeed, they struck. This day, in my opinion, sent us back. Shots were fired in Lagos, in Kaduna, and in Ibadan, but none was heard in Enugu. Of course, it had to do with how the coup was planned in the first place. The coup was foiled, and it fed into a conspiracy because of the nature of the way the participants of that coup were structured. One Yoruba man, mostly Igbo, no Northerner. And then the coup was followed by J.T. Aguironsi, who not long after was handed over to by Nwafori's group of ministers, who was led by Nwafori's. Of course, the first thing he did was to form a unitary system, dissolve the regions as they were. And the thing about coups in the military is that when you perform a coup or you do a coup, typically you should be punished. His indecisiveness in handling what happened would lead to the loss of his life. The Northerners, who were already unsure, who were worried, saw the formation of the unitary system and the indecisiveness of J.T. Aguironsi to handle the situation, saw it as something to be killed once and for all. Of course, there was a counter coup in July 1966, of which Gowon was a beneficiary. Not long after, pogroms started in northern Nigeria with the killing of more than 2,000 Igbos. Months later, because of the discussions that failed, the Aburi Accords that failed, Colonel Ojukwu would call for secession. Gowon and Ojukwu could not resolve or put their pride aside, and it will lead to a war that will cost millions of lives. That war is a blemish on Nigerian history. The war ended with Gowon's words, "No victor, no vanquished," and the wounds are yet to heal. We still have agitations for the same Biafra because of belief that there's marginalization. Of course, every war comes with its problems. There was immense corruption during the war. A lot of people got rich overnight. And basically, I will summarize the rest of the military rule in Nigeria as dancing chairs. Each new military officer coming to tell the nation why the old government was not, to have been, in leading the country in the first place. A comment about the military era. Soldiers are not trained to lead governments. They are trained to kill. They are trained for crisis times against enemy or foe and foe. J.J. Olule made this quote in his book Military Leadership in Nigeria, 1966 to 1979. If military intervention in politics is incompatible with the ethics of the military profession, whose responsibility is it then to change a bad government? In Africa, generally, bad rulers fail to turn to the electorate, and when they do, rigging and other election malpractices usually alter what should be the verdict of the electorate. Perhaps Africans need to cultivate the habit of thorough examination to be able to know when things are bad and call it quits. The summary of military era is the military has no business in leading people, at least leading in a democratic society. They were not trained to solve the problems, and especially the officers who took charge were mostly the senior ones. Once you had a following and you had a gun, you could take over power. Now, let's look at democracy. In democracy, I'll say we've not fared well either. Politicians, I'm sure you would have heard it is politics. And what compels politicians to run for office? I'll assume to help the people. I'll assume to change the nation. I'll assume that they intend and they have a vision for the nation. But the problem we've seen over the years is that there is no compelling vision. There is no speaking to and convincing the people. What we've had in history from beginning of Nigerian elections is vote snatching, and more recently vote buying, as technology is making that a little difficult. Nigerian politicians who run for the presidential position will rather speak at Chatham House or CNN than speak to us. They've acted over the years to be above the law. And in a match, I mean, the example of you watching a football match and you see a striker and you see a moment when he should shoot and you scream, shoot. And he doesn't do so. It's very frustrating. And our politicians have had many opportunities to send us to a place where we would have made great progress. We've missed so many opportunities, but we must not give up hope, because people, I believe, do change. Nigerian citizens, which I'm one. The idea of the national cake as something to be shared, not as something to contribute towards, is, a big problem. We have an entitlement mentality. I don't speak about everybody, but on the average, that government should provide everything. But in most societies that do work, or that have worked better than ours, government is always playing catch up. I remember my first year at the University of Ibadan, the students were striking because there was a raise of the accommodation fees from 90 naira to, I think, 3,500 naira. At that time, 90 naira, it was ridiculous to have accommodation for a year. But that's the sort of situation we find ourselves. In general, we ignore the laws that should be obeyed. I mean, one of the things I find very frustrating driving in Nigeria is that the rules are meant to be disobeyed. There's no intent to obey the laws. You can rinse and repeat for anywhere in the world. We built a reputation of, not obeying laws, of escaping, of doing things that have made our Nigerian passport pretty useless. Try traveling anywhere in the world. Some years ago, I was intending to travel to Trinidad to do a job, Trinidad and Tobago. And the number of visas that I needed to take caused my host to say, hey, don't worry, there's no point. So what has happened to our nation is not only have we not maximized our potential at home, we are destroying our ability to make progress abroad. Nigerians, unfortunately, are also the greatest Nigerian bashers. To be truthful, we have not met our potential. We are not doing anything close to what we should do. But having walked across Africa, I've learned something. I've been to countries worse than ours, and the people are a lot more, hopeful about the future and their nations. There's always a scheme. Unfortunately, as a people, we've grown comfortable with corruption so much that we don't trust. There's always something behind things, and it's a big problem. We treat our collective assets with neglect. I always give this example. I've traveled to airports in Lomé, Abidjan, and Dakar. Those countries are poor countries compared to Nigeria. But when you get to the airport, not just about the beauty of the airports alone, Nigeria has built new airports. But the external facing things in Nigeria, for example, toilets. You go to toilets in those countries and you have to respect them. You have to respect the work ethic. You have to respect that, they are patriotic. Every time I travel into Lagos, I mean, this stench. And the people who are supposed to be cleaning the place, anything for your boy, it's quite disappointing. It's not all gloom. I mean, we've made a lot of progress individually in sport, in literature, in science. We've produced great professors. We've exported some of the best people, all over the world. So indeed, we have great capacity, great capacity to do a lot of good, and I believe very strongly that with the right outlook, with the right vision, we can make great progress. Development is earned. Development doesn't drop in your laps. Individuals don't develop by accident. If you look at the world today, most nations are poor. Very poor. They're poor because they are unable to tap or control, let's say, control the environment and to use it to produce wealth. Let's look at Africa maybe 300 years ago. Let's look at a landowner in Ibadan. He would have had to have so many children, probably had acres of land, but would not have been able to cultivate it all if he didn't have a significant number of children to farm the land. Lands which he could not farm, he will probably maybe rent out. That's the best he could do with it. He would have to use his hoe, and they will have to work the land. Now, bring the plow. And now, if he's got acres of land, the plow is walking through that land with ease. First, it's doing a lot more in acreage than he could have done. And second, he's doing it a lot faster. So what he's able to get from the land is significant, very significant. I want to say that nothing is a resource except value can be derived from it. So I hear a lot, and I've used resource in that way before, to say Nigeria is rich. And now I know better, because we've had whatever we've had for years, and we're not rich. We're not rich. When we were producing 2.2 million barrels of oil a day, we were not rich. We were never rich. We were never rich because we could not derive value from it on our own. I always make this argument to say, the oil was there, we didn't even know it was there. The guys who knew about oil, who had the knowledge about oil, who knew how to look for it, came. They looked for it. They found it. They drilled for it. They had the know-how to harness it, to bring it out of the ground. They took it out of the ground. The only thing that we benefited was that it was on our land. So if they did not come, the oil remains in the ground. So it's important to put this in perspective, because without the ability to harness something, it can be converted into wealth. And this has been what has dogged us, has held us back, because really there's no productivity without knowledge. I always give this example. It's a figure I keep in my head. 1 barrel of oil equivalent is 1 man working for 4 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 1 barrel of oil equivalent. It is equal to 1,700 horses working for 1 hour. That's what technology, that's what knowledge can unleash. So if resources, real resource, is not valuable until we can harness it, then the knowledge the knowledge required to harness resources are what matter the most. The truth is, knowledge is not a domain of any one racial group. Knowledge is cumulative. The Europeans didn't know about the Hindu-Arabic numerals, that is 1 to 10, base 10, until the 1300s. Most of mathematics was developed in Egypt or in the East, the Middle East, or India. So it's important to realize that progress then is how we're able to get knowledge, harness it, and use it to produce value. Knowledge is critical for making any sort of progress. Have we had knowledge in the past? Yes. In Nigeria, we've had the Nok civilization. We've seen the products of Ife bronze, images, works of immense brilliance. But the thing about knowledge is it's cumulative and it must not be lost. It must be built upon. We must use the windows of opportunity that we have. So Nigeria has been an oil producing nation for a long time. and probably has built some capacity as well. I mean, now we have local oil companies and so on. But right now we have a national oil company that, can't do what the internationals were doing. And we've not used, our opportunities the way we should have maximized them. To maximize development and to get development, we must have fit for purpose leadership. People who understand what needs to be put in place and who, are able to put all the resources that we need to make progress. So, in part of negotiating our future, we must acknowledge our uniqueness. One of the things that has dogged Nigeria is, our composition as the fact that we are ethnically diverse. Most of Africa hasn't worked because of ethnicity. In fact, most of the world where you have diversity in ethnicity, those nations struggle to work properly. We have a large population. World Bank says about 221 million, and we rank 6th in the world. Our median age is 18.6 years. And that is instructive. It means that half of our population is below 18.6 years. So in the next 18 years, those people would, some of them will be 37, the youngest will be 18. And that would be 100, over 100 million people. We need to use them because they are our future. Yes, we have resources to harness, arable land, gas. Of course, there are challenges with, the terrain, wets from how we'll pipe it and so on. But those are things that can be done engineering-wise. 85% of, exploitable hydropower is undeveloped. In fact, I think we can do 52, gigawatts from what I've read. So we have an excellent environment, decent waterways, land configuration is fine, and we have accomplished entrepreneurs and leaders in STEM fields. Nigeria is, in recent times, has been one of the, fastest, one of the largest, sources of FDI, foreign direct investment, into startups. Some of our startups have become unicorns. I was lucky to work for a decent startup in Nigeria, and they do excellent work. And they actually solve real problems. And, I will speak about that much later. Nigeria is resilient. We've braved really tough times. I can remember my childhood. I remember the first time electricity went off. So I did see the good side a little bit. I managed to see. Most people never got to see that. I saw some of the good sides of Nigeria. I remember the first time electricity went, I was scared. University of Ibadan, I went overnight, didn't come back till the next day. That was strange, very strange. I saw water dry from the taps. The taps used to flow, and then I saw water dry. So Nigeria has seen better days, but Nigeria can still see good days ahead, and we have the potential to do a lot more. One thing I believe very strongly is that there's more wealth within Nigeria than without. We have the people. All we need to do is to educate them That doesn't seem to be a priority nowadays. So another part of negotiating, the future is what we must do as individuals. As I mentioned in the quote, earlier, self-awareness is so important for how an individual, first of all, can make progress. So if we want to improve as a person, we want to analyze ourselves and say, where are we? What are we doing? What are we doing right? Or what are we doing wrong? And make an assessment of where we are and where we want to be and make those adjustments. The truth is that Nigeria is a dream, okay? Nigeria is not a finished product. Nigeria is something that we are building and we should continue to build. And therefore we should really think, show leadership and self-governance by obeying the existing rules. So there are a lot of calls for changing the constitution because it's inherently unfair. But there's a lot of, I'm pretty sure 90 to 95% of our rules are just fine. They are good enough to maintain a decent society. Let's start with obeying those first. We have a say in terms of how our votes will count. Very soon, the elections will occur in February. Vote your conscience, ask questions, don't sell your vote, and make sure your vote counts. Because we are building a nation and we need to play our part in making sure that the right people with the right set of skills get there. We need to demand proper behavior around us. Our system is broke in the sense that, okay, I'll give an example of getting an international passport. There's usually the government price, that is the price that goes into government coffers. And then there's the price that goes into the government worker's pocket. I call it the government worker tax. So we have individuals who have created their own systems or who have sidetracked government systems. I know the immigration recently created an online system. And God help you, you go through that system. All the best we get in your international passport. We must never stop learning. We must never stop learning because learning is the gateway to the future. There are a lot of things I've come to know by just reading. Just reading. They open doors. They open vistas to us. And we must keep learning. We must be part, of the development of our nation by really being committed to learning. We must use our networks for influence. Fantastic thing that we're doing here today, where we're using this group, this network, we're leveraging it, and we're going to make it even better. I'll tell you something. I attended the Imperial College London, and from the day I left, the communication has never stopped. They even gave me an email for bragging rights. Recognize diversity, but prize character. So many of us will agree that, whether we like it or not, we've been born into a country where it's tribal, the history is there, the pains are there. Different groups hold some animosity against other groups. But when you need a doctor, when you need a surgery, you don't make the call for a Yoruba doctor, or you ask for the best doctor. If you want to build a house, you ask for the best builder. So if we as individuals want the best for our nation, then we must prize character rather than, how people are different from us. Other things that we have to do to negotiate the future is to understand there is no free lunch. There's a cost for everything. There's a cost for education. I'm very grateful to Nigeria. I got an immensely free education. A lot of my colleagues elsewhere in the world are still paying student loans. I don't have any such problem. I'll say that it's a challenge, education in Nigeria. We started out, pushing people through school. If I recall, people were bonded. You came back, work for the nation or serve the nation. A lot of people did that. Well, I think after that, the systems are broken down and division is not very clear. So people don't think to give back. I would say, never let a good crisis go to waste, as Winston Churchill said. There are many opportunities that will come. We have an opportunity in February to choose a leader. Some may feel that we're between Scylla and Charybdis, between a rock and a hard place. Find leadership, but we must start from where we are. So, the aggregate. Our leaders between 1960 and 66, struggled to handle, the challenges of negotiation, of skill in building the nation. And by their mishandling of what happened, a group of young people took over. And that made things even worse. Some of those people were the most brilliant people, people who have done really great things in our history. And we will need a new breed of people, skill in negotiation, humility, selflessness, to be able to negotiate Nigeria. Most projects, engineers will go into a project with things already decided. There's already a business case in place. They've already done the homework. They've already agreed they're going to do it. Yours is, the investment decision is already made. You just go and make it happen. Problem with Nigeria is not, what we have is not an engineering problem. What we have is a stakeholder problem. It's a social problem. It's a problem that needs great skill in navigating. Almost wherever and whenever this happens, it's a continual thing. We must continue to look at where we are, where we should be, and the gaps required to fill it. Do we have the resources? Or where are we going to get the resources from? Look at the options of how to get there and select valid options. And we must start from where we are. The beautiful thing about Nigeria today is that technology is helping a great deal. We have a lot of startups, especially in the fintech area, who are changing the way banking is done, who have reduced transaction costs, who are changing, the whole face of finance in Nigeria. And, some of them have become unicorns in their own right. I'll give an example of a startup, which I know very well, which is Max, is a mobility, in the mobility space. Solving a small problem. Many may argue and say, that maybe motorcycles are not the way to go. But we have a current problem where we have a lot of unemployed people. And what Marx has done is that they've provided credit. One of the reasons why credit has not taken hold in Nigeria, is infrastructural. One of the things I learned in my, sojourn there, understanding the terrain, is even though there's technology and we would like to leapfrog, leapfrog stages in progress, the infrastructural basis of a nation is important for how you can even implement IT. So, for example, where our urban planning is poor, where you can't find where a guy lives, he doesn't have a number, he's built, somewhere in the bush. How do you get finance? How do you give him money and make sure that you get your money back? So those are the kind of problems that some of these startups are solving. Building databases, building things around psychology, about how people think, and how you can implement a credit system in what is a broken system. So government will always play catch up, but kudos to the young men who are doing fantastic work in really solving Nigeria's problems. The truth is, capital will go where there's a promise of return. So we don't have all the time in the world to get capital, and we need to arrange our house in such a way that we can make progress, be attractive in such a way that we can make progress. What can we agree on? Lawrence E. Harrison wrote this in his book, okay, how values affect human progress. Life is better than death. Health is better than sickness. Liberty is better than slavery. Prosperity is better than poverty. Education is better than ignorance. Justice is better than injustice. The title of the book is Culture Matters: How Values Affect Human Progress. Productivity. The World Economic Outlook by the IMF in 2022 shows that Nigeria lags the world and emerging markets, where somewhere between 2,000 and 2,000 US dollar per capita. Prosperity is better than poverty, and some causes of friction in Nigeria are corruption in government, our underskilled workforce. I've interviewed a computer science master's degree holder that could not use Excel. I wasn't asking for code, couldn't use Excel. Clear and favorable policy direction. So we see like the change in the currency in recent times. Not just that, but the fees that people pay in trying to conduct transactions maybe pricey for people, and they may find other ways around to react, because even though you make policies, people are not statues, they make adjustments. Clear procedures for government interaction. This is so important. In the UK, for example, if you want to do anything with the government, You can go on a website and find exactly what you need to do. Everything is clear. There's no ambiguity. You don't need any agents. Lack of trust and access to credit. I've mentioned, talk about lack of trust and how it affects getting credit. Lack of planning and control of built environment. I've explained that as well. That because we don't have infrastructure, even if we want to implement IT systems, it will be difficult because the IT systems are built on top of, take for granted that you have infrastructure. Lack of deployment of IT systems, especially for, citizens. So databases, from in the 2000s, we had like 3 or 4 different databases, capturing our information, or in the country, whether it's the TIN or the BVN or the national ID card. We have 3 different projects, so no advanced thinking in terms of the framework. I call this days to justice. That is, how long does it take your judicial system or your justice system to give justice? Education is better than ignorance. One thing is clear, Nigerians need to be educated, and the education that needs to occur is to be focused on STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, where we focus. If anybody needs to get free education, it's these people, because these are the people that are going to make Nigeria rich, significant riches. Focus on technical education for building infrastructure. So that base level where we have the technicians is beginning to disappear. The training is poor, and they are the ones who will implement, who will build Nigeria. That needs to be woken up. Education credit and not scholarship, and not just scholarships. So somebody must pay for education, and education credit in that area will make a lot of difference. University sponsor startups. So why don't we have startups from UI, from the industrial engineering department? Create something, build something, get funding, build it, make it work, hands-on way of building things. And that's the way forward. That's the way forward. A lot of knowledge is open now. You can go on Udemy, Coursera, all sorts, and learn all sorts of things. There's nothing holding us back from learning nowadays. So security many times depends on, getting security right can be challenging. In places where you have less dense populations, interspersed populations, security is difficult to maintain. The current framework is not working. Of course, it's more complex than that. Years of neglect, years of people not being educated. A lot of things have happened. But the long and short is that because our population is not educated, they are not engaged, it puts us in a very difficult position. The challenges in the Northeast made Nigeria lose 3.2% of GDP. That's significant. That's significant. Decentralizing policing could be one of the things that can help us significantly. That is a political talk. I've worked in agriculture. I learned some of the tricks, and I can say that Nigerians are being killed. If you have a conscience, if we have consciences, agriculture is one of the places that we should look at very carefully. it's one of the areas that should be subsidized. I would highlight, antibiotics in general, whether in humans or in livestock. One of the things I learned in my sojourn in agriculture was that, drugs have what we call a withdrawal period. In which case, if you are either selling meat or eggs in poultry, you shouldn't sell those produce after administering those drugs. But the truth is, it's not economic. And in fact, nobody will be in agric if they followed all those rules. So, we have to watch out for health crisis with, antibiotics resistance. And the health authorities should be focused on this significantly. I will highlight, emphasis on quality in health systems to enable safe and effective, patient-focused, timely, efficient, and equitable service. I personally think that industrial engineers are needed in administration of hospitals who do a far, far better job of organizing the place and let the doctors just focus on, what doctors do. We can do an excellent job, building systems that work. Another thing is medical insurance. That's something that I believe that, some entrepreneurs can unlock. It's significant and is an area that needs to be unlocked. Compulsory medical savings scheme. This is being implemented in Singapore, where a portion of your income goes into planning for your health. Is compulsory, is obligatory. All right. So prosperity through a vibrant legal system. We all agree that the legal system is so important. Money won't come into Nigeria if people know that if there's a disagreement, they can't get justice. And if you follow most international transactions, they would decide that arbitration will be in London. That's for good reason. We need to position ourselves so that we can be the center of that sort of thing in Africa. The truth is, there is no promise, of instant success. Countries, like I said earlier, nations are an aspiration. They are something that we have a vision for, and we must first believe in them, and then work towards them. I think that the founders of Nigeria had good intentions, and those who have led after, maybe not all, but give them benefit of the doubt that they had good intentions. Nigeria is something that we must build. I remember as a young boy in the primary school, we used to say the pledge. And it was a pledge to be faithful, to be loyal, to be honest, to serve the nation with our strength, defend our unity and uphold our honor and glory. And it's a prayer. It's so help me God. So we have a responsibility to the nation, really, not just as receivers, but as people who will give and build it. If we don't build it, it will fail. If we abandon it, it will fail. And so we have a great responsibility to it. I believe that Nigeria's problems are not technical first. They are social first. And there will be an opportunity, to make it work. And the quote that I gave earlier, Winston Churchill, there will be opportunities that will arise. We should not let them go to waste. Thank you. Questions, comments, observations?
Thank you so much, Engineer Muyiwa. That was a very enlightening session. I took down a lot of notes, and I like the notes on which you ended, stating that the problems of Nigeria are just as much social as they are technical. And the good thing is that industrial engineering focuses on that human technical interaction and not just on the mechanical or technical aspects alone. So I guess we are the best audience to hear this, and we are very well equipped to implement everything that you have highlighted: prosperity through security, through health, through a legal system, and all the other things. So thank you so much, sir. We would come to take remarks and questions very soon, but we have the representative of the former Vice Chancellor in our midst here, and he's here to give the goodwill message. So Professor Ayelari is the one representing Professor Adewale, who is currently absent. Can we have him speak?
Good evening to you all. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, sir.
Oh, good evening. Sorry for joining you late. I was at another meeting. I got a invitation to represent my Oga this morning, and I thought it was going to be a physical meeting, but I also had to find out that it was a Zoom meeting. So I'm sorry for joining you late. I would like to commend the IPEAA for organizing this lecture, and I think you should keep it up, make it an annual event. I also like to commend our speaker, an engineer who's speaking like a politician. I'm so impressed by historical record of from our slavery days to what we are now in politics. Now, as for me, he went through a race for self-governments, the first civilian governments, military takeover, and the misrule we are all witnessing today. For me, in politics, I see our bane as humans is our failure to accept defeat. Failure to accept defeat is our bane in politics and mainly, probably all facets of our lives. Look at American election. Up to today, Trump is still saying that the election was rigged. Even in Nigeria, the national 83 elections that brought in Shehu Shagari, people thought Babawolo was rigged out of it, that he would have won the election. But it was a tribal politics all over. And we are in it again now. We are now in tribal politics and bringing religion into it. Babangida didn't do us well in this country. I believe a two-party system is the best for us in this country. Because with the two parties, and when we had the two-party system in place that brought in Abiola and Tofa, the structures for two-party were all in states in place. You had the secretariats for NRC and SDP, they're all there. We were taking in two ways, but it quashed that election and brought us back to tribal politics. We are unable. You remember the Tofa Abiola election? You had Tofa is from the north, from Kano. Abiola is from Southwest. The Igbos voted for Abiola. The Hausas voted for him. Nobody talked about tribalism. Nobody talked about religion. But what do we have today? So our speakers do so much on the politics and how we can move the nation forward. I think we need to re-engineer our country the way the topic has gone there. I don't know, but I think if I had my way, I would say we should go back to two-party politics, two-party system. Before I take long, I want to commend the speaker and all of you, the students, the alumni, for organizing this lecture. I said apologies from my boss, Professor I.F. Adewale, for not being able to attend himself. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and the goodwill message there. Okay, and our regards to Professor Adewale. He's a dear friend of the department. He teaches lectures at the MEM program. So thank you. So we know that his heart is with us here. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, so we would take remarks from the chairman on the lecture that we just had. And thank you everybody putting your appreciation in the comments. Very well deserved appreciation. So now I'll welcome Engineer Femi Akitunde to give his remarks on the lecture.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Engineer Muiwa, and a very insightful, historical, and enlightening lecture. If you don't know where you're coming from, you won't know where you are heading. And if you don't know where you're heading, any road will lead to your destination. I think what Muiwa has presented to us this evening has opened our eyes to some of the reasons why we are where we are, and also listening to their prof who just spoke now.
It seems we have lost for a moment. We have lost Engineer Femi Akitunde's network connection, but hopefully he would join soon. This time we would like to take any questions for Engineer Muiwa. If anybody has any questions that they would like to direct to him based on the lecture that he just gave, while we wait for Engineer Femi Akitunde to reconnect to the program. So any questions can be sent into the chat and we would take them. Or if hands can be raised, you can temporarily unmute whoever wants to speak and ask a question. Okay, Engineer Femi Akitunde is back.
Okay, sorry, I had to change location. It's due to the network problem in this service. I don't know what happened to it. Yeah. So basically, I think the lecture has really opened our eyes to important things we need to remember about our past and important things that would define what our future would look like if we do the right thing and we take the right measures. One clear message that I can get from Muiwa's presentation is that we all must be prepared to negotiate our future. And negotiating your future means you must have your terms of engagement, your expected outcome clearly well defined. What future do you want for yourself? Because that's what will determine your engagement. Whether the rule of law is adequately supportive of a good rule of engagement or whether the players will respect it, it's a different thing. You don't have control over it, but let's know how to play our own part. And the little you do in your own corner, the little everybody does in his own corner will add up to make the difference we all desire. Get your PVC, vote. It doesn't matter if the person you voted for will lose or will win. Let your conscience guide your decision. And that is part of negotiating our future. Nigeria has been in this position for long because everybody wants to be on the winning side. Everybody wants to say, look, my vote was not lost because my candidate won. It's not a game. It's about our lives, it's about our future. So let's be mindful of that philosophy and let it determine how we move things forward. But I think Engineer Muiwa Ulule has done a fantastic job this evening. that is highly commendable. And I would really, really not like us to close. Let's look at maybe in another 10 minutes. I would still like us to have one or two people to either give comments or ask questions so that it becomes more interactive. That's the reason why attendance is this high. People want to be engaged. People want to also contribute to what has been shared. So I would take the first person that has raised his hand, and I'm seeing here Temisa to take the floor. If you want to speak, just raise your hand. We will identify or recognize one or two more people. Temisa, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's an honor to listen to my colleague.
Can you unmute yourself, please?
Oh, he's unmuted. I can hear him.
Okay.
I think, yes.
Okay, so, yeah. So, all protocols duly observed.
Are we hearing?
He said it's an honor to actually have listened to my colleague and mates while still in our undergraduate days in the University of Ibadan speak. Muyowa had been an excellent industrial engineer then. He's still one now, and I still believe that we all have a lot to offer. So I want to ask him, I listened attentively to his submission and his presentation. Is there any potential that could be unlocked by our diversity in Nigeria, our ethnic diversity, our divergent views on our political future, and our divergent views on our collective future as Nigerians? Is there any potential that could be unlocked there for national growth and development? Thank you.
Okay, I can go ahead to answer. Okay. History does not support us. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Okay. I can't think about any group of people who have managed to do it successfully, as diverse as us. But let's look at the US. The US is not a country. In recent times, it's a lot more divided. But the US is a country that is built based on immigrants. It started as a country of immigrants, right? And they were able to forge some sort of meaning. But the meaning was not around diversity. It was around productivity. It was about the kind of life that they wanted. The challenge with our diversity, because diversity is not fundamentally a problem. The reason we have challenges is that each group sees itself as marginalized. So the way I see this playing out is we really need people with excellent negotiating skills, people who can communicate clearly that our future, I gave the example, if I head to a hospital, I'm not going to ask about tribe. I want the best doctor. So we communicating that has been the challenge. And of course, politicians want to win elections. So, I mean, a politician that doesn't win an election is not really a politician. And what you have in the pocket of every politician, is twofold. He wants to make progress, but he needs to win an election. So that seems to, because I think that the politicians more than divide us. So summary, is it impossible? No. It can be harnessed only by having a laser focus on the future that we want to build, and having a system where we can build fairness, maybe not fairness, and have some sort of, compromise. We're not moving forward without some sort of compromise. Temisa.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I hope that answered the question. We can move forward with some sort of compromise. So we have a couple of questions in the chat. I guess we can do those two, and we would wrap up for the night. So the first one is, how do you think the department, IPE, and UI by extension should execute the journey towards initiating startups?
Okay. You can start. I mean, it can be quite straightforward as having a competition for the best ideas, in a faculty-wide or university-wide competition for ideas that can become businesses. You can have a competition like that, and then from there, or again, you can have, discuss with accelerator programs. I know that in Nigeria now, Techstars is in Lagos, as Techstars is now in Nigeria. So those things are possible. You can midwife in the university first through competitions, and then enter them into accelerators if the ideas are great. Ultimately, good ideas excellently communicated will find funding.
All right, sir. So I think for the message for the students is to build their ideas and learn to communicate them effectively, and also search for opportunities that are existent at the moment. All right, thank you so much, sir. So the other question, the person is talking about how STEM is a very relevant aspect for national development and how we have made progress in the engineering field. So the person is asking that, is there a way that we can influence politics such that the criteria necessary for governance has to do with being in STEM? So it favors people who have played a role in STEM. So if you have played a role in STEM, then maybe you qualify to be in governance. That kind of thing. That's what the person is asking.
Well, first of all, we must be seen to make the sort of impact, that the country needs. When we make that sort of impact, you won't need to negotiate it. You will earn it. So that's the sort of thinking that I will be having. Make the impact, build the nation, build things from scratch, and then you won't need to, you advertise yourself. Let's put it that way. IT has advertised itself. The guys building the unicorns in Nigeria have announced themselves, so.
Okay. Yeah, let us hope that the people are hearing, people that they are announcing to are hearing and are doing what needs to be done to promote them and put them in places of authority and decision making. All right, thank you so much, sir. At this point, I'll just ask, do you have any closing remarks, anything you'd like to say to every one of us here?
I'd like to thank the department and the IPEAA engagement team for the courtesy that you've given me, and to thank every member of the association. I really believe that we can make real progress. The time frame I can't speak of, but the most important thing is that we keep moving forward. The next generation will thank us for making the right decisions today. Let's engage as hard as we can. Let's be good representatives of the nation. And let's not give up on the country, because the nation is something to be built. It's not something that is a finished product. And you and I are making, adding or removing from that picture and that vision.
Thank you so much, sir. I think I would particularly like to thank you for the message of hope that you brought, because you told us the whole story and you made sure to keep hope alive through everything that you said, encouraging us that things can indeed get better and that we have the potential to be a great nation. So thank you so much, sir. And thanks to your brother also, who read the citation earlier. He said he had to leave for another meeting by 8. So thank you to him. I would like to call on one of our lecturers, another one of our dear lecturers, Professor Osita Anyeche, to give the votes of thanks this evening.
Hello. Good evening, all.
Good evening, sir.
I want to thank everybody. To me, it's been a very exciting evening. I've been checking the participation from time to time, and I think on the average, we've had over 90 participants, which I think is quite impressive. So we thank everybody who have made some efforts to be part of us this evening. In particular, I will thank our chairman that is always part of us, Engineer Kitunde. We are very grateful you this occasion again tonight. Thank you very much. Then Professor Yelari that represented the former VC, also very grateful that he found time to be part of us. Professor Lule in particular, I think today is Lule's day. We had a prof himself, we had Muewa, and of course the Ayo Junior. And I don't think it's maybe tonight I would have even changed my surname to Lule too, because Muewa and Ayo Junior may be his biological sons, but academically I think I'm also his son. So, Prof, we are very grateful, and yes, we thank all of you for being part of us tonight. The presentation was quite interesting, but if I had my way, I would have changed the title of the topic to be political engineering. I thought from what I had and the little I know about the lecturer, as a scholar of engineering, but he went down memory lane and told us quite a lot about Nigerian political history. If you ask me, he's also a historian. So thank you very much for that. Give us some hints about what we do to make sure we do the best about the country, so that at the end of the day, the whole place will be better than we met it. So on this note, I'll say thank you very much, everybody. I thank all the participants. And please, we always hope that each time we invite you, you'll be part of us. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you so much, Professor Yeche, for the votes of thanks. And once again, thanks to everybody for staying through till the end, for your time. We really honor and value that. Thank you so much. We'll be here again next month, the second Friday next month, and we have something interesting in the lecture series coming up next month. We have our first female speaker, and we would also have the first female chairman. So that is something to look forward to. Clear your schedules ahead and make sure to be present and participate in the event. We would like to use this medium to particularly thank Engineer Tola, who gave the talk on the energy transition, for redeeming his pledge, which was used to procure solar panels for the department. So thank you so much, sir. We are very grateful. And also to our speaker for this night for his generosity, because he also redeemed a pledge, a donation to the department. So we are sincerely grateful for all that he continues to do, giving back to make sure that the department is thriving and that our greatness is preserved. Thank you all so much. Those of us coming behind have great examples to look at and to hope to emulate someday. So thank you so much, everybody. It has been a lovely couple of hours with us. Thank you for being a very great and cooperative audience. I don't know if I'll be doing this next month, but I look forward to being here again next month in whatever capacity I shall be serving. So thank you all and have a great night. Have a great weekend.